Welcome back. I hope you're doing great. As a part of this video, we'll understand what is defect lifecycle. So what is defect lifecycle? Defect lifecycle is a process in which bug or a defect goes through different stages in its entire life. Means when you find a defect, you have to fix it and you have to retest it. So instead of not having a set process and blindly follow some process, there is a proper defect life cycle where defect goes through different stages in its entire life. Defect has different states throughout its life, right from the state it is detected to the stage where it is closed. So it has different states, it has different stages. We also call defect life cycle as a bug life cycle because defect is called as a bug. So it is also called as a bug life cycle. So if somebody asks you what is bug life cycle, don't get confused. It is a defect life cycle. So how exactly it happens? When you find a defect, it is in a new state. Then it will be moved to ascend state. Then it will be moved to open state. Then it will be moved to fixed state. Then it will be moved to retest state. After retest, in case the defect is not fixed, then it will be reopened. After retesting, in case if the defect is fixed, it is set to close state. Sometimes what happens is when you assign a defect from that stage, you may have other three stages. It can move on to the default state or reject state or duplicate state. We will look at all these states in the subsequent slides. What exactly happens in new state when you are testing an application? You find a variance from the requirements. That is when the defect is found. When the defect is found, you log a defect in any of the tool like JIRA or Bugzilla or HPALM. That is when the defect is set to the new state. You have just logged the defect. You have just punched in all the details of a variant from the requirements in a tool after the defect is detected. When you log the defect in a defect tracking tool, then the validations and testings will be performed in the later stages of the defect lifecycle. After new, the next state is assign. What exactly happens as a part of the assign state? You may have multiple people as a part of the team, right? It is not necessary that everybody should start looking at it. What happens is the developer, a manager, or a lead will assign the defect to a particular developer or developer department. That is when it moves to the assign state. Then what happens is when a manager or a lead assigns the defect to a developer analyzes the defect and whether is it a defect or it is just a duplicate or the testing team have confused the requirement. He analyzes it. In case if he feels if it is a valid defect, then he'll set the state of a defect to open. In case developer feels no, it is not a proper defect, then he will set the defect to one of the stages, either duplicate, deferred, rejected, or not a bug. We'll see them at the end of this presentation. After developer finds a defect is valid, then he will start working on it. He will go and fix. Let us see if he has to fix something in the for loop or a while loop, or he has to change the flow itself. He does all those changes, then he tests himself. Once he feels the defect is fixed and the code or the program is working as expected, that is when the developer moves the defect status to fixed. Once the defect is moved to the fixed state, then the respective tester will be given an alert. Okay, whatever the defect you have logged, it is already fixed. That is when tester has to reconfirm whether the defect logged by him or her is it really fixed or not. That is when he will go and set that defect to the retest phase. And as a part of this phase, he will go and retest or see or check again if the developer has fixed the defect as per the requirement or not. In case the defect is not fixed properly as per the requirement, that is when tester would go ahead and reopen the defect. He sets the state of the defect to reopen state. In case the defect logged by the tester is not valid, not genuine, that is when developer rejects the bug. He sets the state of the defect as a reject. In case the defect is valid, but it may not be required for the defect to be fixed as a part of this particular release. That is when developer sets the state of the defect as a deferred so that it can be taken up in the any upcoming releases. In case there is already a defect which is logged by some other tester or a same tester, that is when developer sets the state of the defect as a duplicate. Duplicate means there is already a defect of the same steps. Maybe the tester would have confused or a different tester has logged the same defect. That is when developer sets the state of the defect to duplicate. After retesting, if the tester feels everything, what are the variance from the requirement he has logged as a defect, if it is fixed properly by the developer, after retesting, he moves the state of the defect to closed state. Isn't it wonderful? We have a wonderful process for logging the defect, tracking the defect, and closing the defect. That improves a quality of a product. Thank you.